It's episode 246 of the Cassius Morris Show. Thanks for tuning in to this brand new edition of the podcast. Coming off an insane week, I gotta say, I think this past week has been the wildest week of the podcast, maybe even since I've started, and I've been doing this for about a decade now. Over 500,000 people tuned in to the last live stream on Friday night talking about the Grammys. Friday, Saturday night, the stream before was the live music reaction stream where we had artists from all around the world submitting songs and coming in and giving each other feedback. It was super cool and it's really inspired me to do a lot more live stuff. So the music reaction stream is going to be coming every other week, and I'm going to be doing different live streams in between, sort of at spontaneous times, but trying to cover award shows and different events like that, live concerts. The only thing though is I have to figure out how to do it without completely screwing my channel. I probably got close to getting a serious violation when they took it down. I even had a dream that I lost my channel last night. So this has been on my mind, but I'm gonna find cool and hopefully legal ways to keep you guys entertained through the live streams. But before we jump into this episode, here's a little highlight recap of the music reaction stream where people send in their music from all over the world to hear my live reaction and get feedback from people in the chat. Here are my 5 favorite artists from this week's music stream.
I'm still falling for you.
Nice.
Walking away, go ahead, call me insane.
It's like Zeppelin meets the Chili Peppers. Sounds like an old school Kiss demo.
The eyes of a child see life as it really is. Hop aboard a train of thought. And need to know what in particular, meticulous, compulsive, ridiculous power.
God damn. What I tell you guys, insane talent. This has been, like I said, one of my favorite things to do since I started the show. You can send music my way anytime. The address is cshowmusic@gmail.com. And like I said, every other Friday is going to be the live stream, and we're going to be incorporating more and more details. I'm getting another camera for it. I'm getting a setup for guests, like I've mentioned. We're going to start giving prizes away. Now, before we jump into the interview with Chuck Billy, I wanted to jump into something I found online. I wanted to go through a thread on Ask Reddit. Now, this is a website that I frequently read. There's new threads every single day with questions that are asked about basically any topic and different scenarios, and strangers anonymously all over the world answer with their own experiences. This one says, what brings out the worst in a person? Lack of sleep or being hungry. That's true. Fun fact, if you feel like you hate everyone, you need to eat. If you feel like everyone hates you, you need to sleep. That's good. Desperation in many forms. War, that escalated quickly. Mario Kart, yes. Other people, that's interesting. You know, from my personal experience, I would have to give my answer as people getting what they want too quick, or maybe not having to work for things. I think that can bring out the worst in a person in ways that they really wouldn't expect, and I think is more so self-inflicted. So maybe it doesn't really apply, but definitely that's what I would say. I would say getting it too quick or being sort of spoiled when you don't deserve it, being born to rich parents, whatever the case may be. Today's guest on the podcast is the one and only Chuck Billy, of course, the vocalist of the mighty Testament. Testament is back on tour with the Bay Strikes Back tour featuring Exodus and Death Angel. The tour is kicking off on September 9th, and I want everybody to go check them out on the road. They put on one of the best metal concerts that I've personally ever seen, and I'm not just saying that. As I actually bring up in the podcast, they have some of the craziest mosh pits, walls of death. I'm not going to spoil what we chat about, but you definitely don't want to miss this, especially if you're a fan of Testament. And there's also a couple little details about what's coming next for them musically included in there as well. So hopefully you guys enjoy it, and we'll catch you right afterwards.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. What's up, Chuck?
What's happening, man? How are you?
Good, dude. Hey, it's a pleasure to chat with you, man. Really appreciate the time.
Cassius, that's a unique name.
Cassius, like Cassius Clay.
Cassius, so you spell it different than Cassius Clay, though.
No, I think he spelled it the same, but
really?
Yeah, I believe so. But I mean, I don't blame anyone if they say it the way it's spelled, because it's just one of those names, right?
Right on.
So what's going on with you, man? I know it must be a pretty busy time getting ready for tour. I know you've been rehearsing like crazy. I mean, maybe talk to me about that.
Well, we've had 2 weeks of rehearsals with Dave. Dave came back about 3 weeks. We'll go for a week, 2 weeks go for a week, and he'll come back here next week for our final rehearsals. But yeah, everything, just planning to leave. I mean, we haven't toured in 2 years, and I'm getting kind of a little anxious about touring, but
Really?
getting set with my animals, getting the house ready to take off for a few months. I mean, just there's so much to it. I'm a little anxious because I haven't been home on tour this long ever.
Right.
So, to be home for 2 years and now to leave, to go away, I'm a little anxious, but I'm sure after a first couple of shows, I'll feel back to normal, because after having COVID, I haven't done a tour. So I don't even know how my lungs will feel working every day like that. So we'll see, but I'm ready.
I guess we'll find out. So, I mean, that anxiety, did you expect to feel some anxiety, or is this something that was unexpected?
Unexpected. I mean, I think everybody had a little weird experience of being home so long and trapped. I think it drove some people to drink or do things they don't normally do, or get in, out of a comfort zone that we're all accustomed to, and it, feeling like you had nowhere to go. So yeah, I imagine everybody takes it their own way, but for me, I'm just a little anxious because of it.
No, that totally makes sense. I mean, in terms of your after effects, how are you feeling now after the COVID? Are your lungs okay now, or?
Yeah, I mean, because that was 2 years ago, of course.
Right.
And, of course, I've been riding my bike and, just trying to do everything I can to prepare for a tour like normal.
100%. That's the way to go. And I mean, of course, it must be super cool to have Dave Lombardo back in the band. I mean, what's the dynamic like so far, maybe compared to before?
Well, it's totally night and day, because that was 21 years ago or something.
Yeah. A few changes, I'd imagine.
Few changes. Dave actually conceived one of his kids on our tour.
Wow.
He had his family traveling with him and the kids and everything. So it was different Dave. Right. Now that we're all 20 years older, touring a little bit different, just being more adult-like, I guess, than we were back then. It's definitely different, but I think on the bigger scale of things, it felt so natural getting Dave back, just hanging out, going out for a meal after practice or something. Just, it's almost like, we know this routine. This feels comfortable,
Very familiar territory.
Yeah, totally.
So it must make it sort of feel like it's sort of maybe, does that help with the anxiety going into the tour?
No, I'm always, for this tour, I'm always the same way for no matter what tour I do. I get anxious till the first show. And once I sing the first show, then I'm kind of in. Because, as a singer, if I was a guitar player, I probably wouldn't have that anxiety. But as a singer, having to use my voice, I don't know if I'll over push and next, I got a sore throat for the show 2, or I'm going to lose my voice in a week. I get these things in my head that maybe drive me crazy. So, but once I get going, I go, okay, my voice is good. I feel strong. If it's right there, then I relax.
Do you have any specific voice tips that you do to keep yourself in good shape on the road? And because, I mean, traveling and stuff, it's obviously so much.
Well, I don't smoke weed anymore on the road.
Okay.
I smoke like, madman when I'm home.
Right.
But when I go on the tour, I quit smoking probably about a month before I leave. Go through all the withdrawals and sweaty palms and the whole thing, and
dreams,
just everything. And so it takes me about a month to really forget about it. Especially I got so much other things on my mind. It's easy to get it out of there, because when I am just smoking pot, I like to relax and chill and not worry about shit. Well, when I go on the road, I got a lot to worry about. So it doesn't work for me. That, and I don't drink anymore. So those two things, I'm pretty sober on the road. But I do, every time I sing, I do a warm-up that I've had for about 36 years from a teacher, vocal coach that I had. And I do it by routine. If I'm going to sing, I got to do this hour warm-up no matter what. And if I don't do it, I almost feel like, oh man, I can't sing. It's a weird thing, but that's my routine.
So it's a full hour and it's a bunch of scales and different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do the guys ever sort of break balls? Because I know that sometimes with the lead singer, they'll kind of go at them for their warm up, or are they just professional and they're used to it by now?
Well, the warm up I do, and they've all heard it because I just do it on my phone,
Okay.
and it's not loud. I'm not loud and screaming top of my voice. It's real calm and soothing. It almost puts me to sleep. It puts you in a trance. And even the guys, it's soothing for them because it's nice and peaceful. And I just control these notes and they're like, man, you're putting me to sleep.
Do you have a sample?
Yeah, let's see. But it's soothing, but when I get into it, because I don't sing it really hard. I sing it really soft.
Right.
Here's just some of it. Let's see. So I do these soft ones, just real easy. These scales. And I do that for an hour, and they're all ready to fall asleep by the time I'm done doing.
I'm relaxed already.
Things, right? But and I've learned because when I first started doing it and training, I always thought I had to use my full voice, like me, and it's like I've learned over the years and even found out from some vocal coaches later on that we've learned that it's not pushing the voice, it's actually controlling the air. And so that's why when I sing it really soft, I control it more and it controls the breathing.
Right.
And it limbers your voice up better than pushing it, thinking you have to like give it your all. That's not the case.
And then
so
you'll be ready for that later.
Yeah, because I'm going to do that later. I just got to make sure my voice is stretched out. It's almost, I'd look at it as a stretch now.
Do you think most metal singers are classically trained, so to speak, like you, or do you think there's a lot of people that just don't have technique? I mean, what have you encountered?
Well, I mean, there's some people are naturals. Unfortunately, I wasn't a natural, so I had to kind of work at being a singer. There's some people that just are natural singers, and it just those are the guys that piss me off. Like they don't even warm up, they just get in there and kill it, So yeah, I mean, it's just different. But that for me, like anything, like if you're a weightlifter and you start lifting weights, you're going to start with like 10 pounds, and next you're up to 50-pound dumbbells. It's just you get stronger and stronger and stronger as more you do it. So I think that's kind of, in my case, I was, because I was a guitar player trying to learn how to be a singer. So once I was like, okay, I got to learn how to be a singer now. And what does that mean? So I kind of went through all the proper steps, went to school for it, took private lessons, and just kind of stuck with that routine.
Do you play a lot of instruments at home now, or is it mostly just singing?
I don't even sing at home. I play guitar. I don't play guitar that much though anymore. I got so many other things that are going on. It's when it's time to tour, I focus, then I shift gears and go back to focusing and training, riding my bike, building my wind up,
Right. All the key elements, on tour. One of the craziest things I've seen at your shows is, the walls of death, of course, and the mosh pits. Just wondering, I mean, do any shows stand out to you as the most insane displays of this that you've seen, or maybe like any cities?
Totally. South America, when you go to Bogota, Chile.
Wow.
They've always been the most radical and the hugest pits that I've seen. And most of the time they're running around with car flares lit in the pit. And it's like, it's insane. It's really insane, but it's controlled insanity. Because it's that, nobody gets hurt, but they're just violently having fun. It's great.
So they're really the most passionate, because that's what you see in all the documentaries. They say South America, that's the spot.
Yeah, they love their metal. I mean, they don't have mainstream radio or anything. They're getting what they have on the internet. So when they get a band to come there, because every band doesn't get to go there every year. You go there every 3-4 years. So when a band finally comes, it's like right on. They're unless you're Iron Maiden or something, you're Metallica, you're playing there all the time. But most bands don't get that opportunity. So when you come down there with a good package, they're ready.
Yeah. Oh man, probably embracing with open arms. You know. Yeah. And speaking of different locations, of course, and the new tour is called The Bass Strikes Back. Just curious about the whole Bay Area and the metal scene. I mean, as a performer, as an artist, what does sort of the Bay Area identity mean to you?
Well, I mean, because we were very lucky to, looking back, be a part of a scene and a musical movement, because when the 80s and early 80s, the Bay Area was more known for punk rock, and a lot of hair metal was back then.
Right.
And there wasn't really any thrash bands. Exodus was probably our first real thrash band, extreme band in the area. And then, of course, when Metallica came back to the Bay Area, it was that early Metallica Exodus stuff that was, that was it. So that's kind of what really stemmed a lot of where this movement took off. And honestly, all the hair bands left the Bay Area and they went to LA, to Hollywood.
Right.
So our movement kind of scared everybody out. So now there's a lot of places to play in the Bay Area that there was no hair bands taking up the venues anymore. It was all metal.
Right. A lot of open slots.
A lot of open slots. So every time you get to go to Berkeley Square, Keystone, San Francisco, Mabuhay Gardens, Rock on Broadway, all these things are all within, 20 minutes of each other. So you can go see the opening band in Berkeley and catch the middle band up at the Stone, and then go across the street to catch the closing band at midnight or something. So it felt like we had the Bay Area was ours. We had so many venues to play. So of course it was so new, and there wasn't the internet. So we had the fanzines and magazines that was kind of showing, oh, this is the East Coast metal. This is the West Coast. This is South California, North California, so we felt like we had something to represent. We're a movement of music from the Bay Area that actually had a place in Europe. You know what I mean? Right. Because Europe, they were, for me, in my opinion, so ahead of everything as far as metal. Europe, to me, didn't have clubs with hair metal bands coming through and playing like California did. It was more harder and heavier music. So when we went over to Europe for the very first time and played the Dynamo, the response was insane. Our record, The Legacy, wasn't even out yet, and we went and played like a 4,000 seat festival out in the parking lot, and the club show, and they were singing our songs, and we're like, holy smokes, man, how do these guys know this music? It's so obscure. But then we quickly realized, oh, there's nothing like we have back home. Everything seems to be more extreme here.
Wow.
And more hungry for it. So we fit in really well. So we always kind of just Europe was always where we'd always go a lot, because to us, America wasn't ready for that yet, in my opinion.
They were ahead of the curve over there.
Yeah.
Man, no, that's super fascinating. What was the Bay's sort of vibe when the grunge era came around? What was the reaction in that?
Well, I mean, just for everybody, because we had built up a movement, and thrash was getting covers of magazines and bands like that. And then when that, the Seattle Nirvanas, Pearl Jam, Soundgardens, and all them kinds kind of came out, the mainstream radio, because mainstream was actually playing metal on drive time traffic hours, morning driving hours. So it was like, wow, metal's getting exposure. But then that other sound came out, and all the radios kind of literally within a month shifted gears and changed their platforms, because back then when radio would play, they'd have their top 20 lists. And that top 20 list was basically the same playlist every other station would play. Mm-hmm. So once that Seattle sound started kicking in, the rest of the country started jumping on that sound, and the metal kind of got swept under the rug. And at the same time, the major labels who were signing metal bands at the time, shifted gears again and said, okay, I want to find more Pearl Jams and Nirvanas that are making these records very cheap and selling millions of records. So they shifted gears. So now metal bands are getting dropped from major labels and going back to independents. So the metal in that time, it's almost like we just got our legs chopped out right from underneath us. And those 90s from 92 to 98 was some really tough years for metal in America and getting back on radio or getting exposure, you know. So I think by early 2000s, there's a whole new movement of new metal and new styles of metal that started breaking through, especially bands like early Pantera. Thank God for like Pantera. The early 90s kept forging forward and kept that strong, and bands like Slayer as well really kept it down for us. And it's like, okay, there's still hope for this style of music. And then once we got into the 2000s, it started getting more genres expanding from black metal, speed metal, thrash metal, doom metal, you know, all this different forms of metal.
All the subs.
It was starting to get healthy again, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Wow. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on, like, you know, you mentioned Cobain and Nirvana. How do you feel about the sort of glamorization of artists like that who are known to have suffered deeply? Because it seems like it's coming back in music. The artists who have drug problems, their mental health issues, it seems to be glorified in a way. I mean, any reaction?
No, but I mean, to each his own. But I think when you're an artist and you're a creative person, you're probably usually a little more unique than most, and you think a little bit different. So, you know, I mean, everybody does drugs. Everybody has problems, but, you know, I think just because you have a little notary and, you know, some fame, maybe they just focus on that a little more than what it really is. I mean, it can happen to everybody, especially like, you know, depression and stuff like that. You can be on top of the world, making a lot of money, but still be depressed, not enjoying yourself in life. And some people scratch their head like, man, what's he have to be depressed about? You know, it's got the world loves him. He does records. He's making money. I don't get it, but it's real.
Have you ever had a moment like that where, like, you do a massive festival or something and you're like, how I'm feeling right now, it doesn't equate with maybe where I'm at or what I just did?
Myself, not personally. I haven't had that feeling of it. I mean, of course, when the 90s, when our band and the music in itself, the genre was disrupted. Yeah, of course, we all felt like, wow, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? You know, is our careers over? Yeah. We worried, but I don't think I didn't freak out yet. It was different for us because we actually came to the end of our record contract, I believe in 94, 95 with Atlantic Records. Okay. So in the middle of all that, we were trying to find our next label, and we went to the independent route. So we had more freedom just to get a little heavier and not be, Atlantic had like A&R people saying, what's the next single? Where's the next ballad? You know? And so we were given a label like Atlantic, these songs that they could push on the radio, but it really didn't represent who we really were. Right. So once we escaped from that, we kind of said, okay, let's get our heads back on and write what we started to do and get back into playing more heavier stuff. And so, you know, we shifted back into being Testament again.
Do you prefer being more or less independent or like a more major label sort of scenario? Because I mean, it sounds like independence is probably better as much as you can, you know, have.
Well, the independent labels, especially as time progressed, labels like Nuclear Blast, who had a lot of metal bands and doing a lot of great things, just as well as the majors. The big difference was major labels, they wanted to either get you on radio or, you know, put out a bunch of videos that you'd spend. I mean, God, we were spending $100,000 to make a video. Today, I'd be like, oh my God, we spent what? No way. Forget it. We're not doing it. I'd rather keep that money and spend it on the band. Right. Than put out a video for $100,000 and now I owe the label a bunch of money.
Exactly. You know? Yeah, because it's not a lot of bands putting it up front. Well, they are putting it up front, but it comes out of the thing.
It comes out of your sales. So a lot of bands dug a lot of big holes that way.
Is there any other tips that sort of, or maybe rules of thumb that you wish you would have known before entering the business, like, or something? Oh man, I wish I could have seen that coming, because there's so many pitfalls.
Well, I probably would have paid more attention to the finances, because our first years, we put out a record every year. Bands don't do that anymore. I mean, every year we'd go on tour, write a record, go on tour, write a record, 4 years in a row. And people just don't do that. And we were gaining popularity, selling out rooms, but also spending money, 2 tour buses, trucking, all elaborate stage and all. We're spending it thinking it's only going to grow and get better and make more money.
Right.
And that was happening. But then again, grunge came off and said, chopped it right away. And so we're like, man, I wish I didn't spend all that money, or I wish I didn't do all the videos for $300,000. I wish I didn't take tour support to build these stages and all this stuff. Man, why did we do that? I wish I would have spent it or invested it or did something different. So I would say that, and that's always to say, what would you give advice to a new band? Try to own your publishing, try to own your songs, and pay attention to what you spend it on.
I love that so much. Hopefully someone else will be saved from hearing that. The Bass Strikes Back tours with Exodus and Death Angel. Real quick, in terms of Testament, I mean, what can we expect for maybe new music from the group? It's been a little while. I know people are excited. Anything we can report?
Well, Eric's actually during COVID has been stockpiling riffs. So there'll be a New Testament album sooner than later, especially since Dave's back. I think Dave, when we wrote The Gathering with him and Eric just jammed. Eric used to like really work out the drums on a drum machine and then give it to a drummer to kind of interpret, make it your own. Where when we wrote that record with Dave just play, dude, just jam. So Eric got to focus on the riffs and playing, and they created some really good songs. So I hope that that's the case now with Dave around, that Eric just starts jamming and Dave starts creating with them.
So there's a few songs already in the works.
Not yet, but Eric's got riffs. He's got the riffs ready to go. And I'm sure once we get on the road, we have sound checks, that's when Eric will kind of introduce a riff and see what Dave does or a drummer does, at a sound check. He'll just start playing something and maybe something comes of it, or at least that's good. Let's record that real quick,
Phenomenal. Chuck, Billy, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure, and have an awesome tour, man.
Right on. We'll hopefully see you out there, huh?
Thanks for tuning into this brand new edition of the podcast. I'm back every single week, looking to put content pretty much daily, give or take a day. But listen, we're going at least 6 days a week, and we're going hard on the content. Live streams at least every other week. And I'm keeping my eye out for live concerts and live events, scoping it out. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to follow me on all social media at Cassius Morris. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. The show is on all those platforms as well at Cassius Show. We're on YouTube, Cassius Morris Official, and on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your audio podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to click that subscribe button on our YouTube platform and the audio platforms on Apple Podcasts and or Spotify. Make sure to click that notification bell as well right next to it to get real-time updates about everything I'm doing. Thanks for tuning into this brand new episode of the show. Until next time, this is Cassius Morris. Rock on.